Shalom, shalom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel. I am not in our ancestral homeland. I am right now in Los Angeles in the Simon Wiesenthal Center with Rabbi Abe Cooper. Shalom, Rabbi Cooper.
Aleichem shalom. Welcome to the hood.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. For those of you who are not familiar, the Simon Wiesenthal Center is obviously a center, one of the main, if not the main centers in the world that deals with anti-Semitism in a very general way, and it has an impact all over the world. And Rabbi Cooper, you want to tell everyone what your role is here? Because then I want to use that to then talk about the situation and the very sad growth of anti-Semitism today since October 7th.
Right. So I'm the Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action for our center. We're based here in LA because the weather is better than New York, Baruch Hashem. But we have offices around the world, including in Jerusalem. And we have a global reach, and we're also a teaching institution. It means we have our film division, Mariah Films, has 2 Oscars. Our films have probably been viewed by around 2 billion people around the world, so we have an interesting window in that arena. Across the street from our offices is our Museum of Tolerance. There have been 7.5 million visitors, probably 95% not Jews over these past decades, last 30 years. I guess you can say my main role is chief troublemaker.
Chief troublemaker.
I mean, sometimes things have to be said and done, which are not easy, but our goal is not to make more problems in the world. Our goal really is to ignite honest dialogue between people. I spend also a lot of time on the road looking for normals. And so we had an involvement. Maybe the only Jewish group doesn't take credit for the Abraham Accords, but we actually had some involvement in the UAE and especially in Bahrain.
Yes, I interviewed Rabbi Cooper right after one of those trips 2 years ago.
Right. So, and I think just to make a quick comment is that the Abraham Accords will go forward and expand when the Arab Muslim world are convinced that Israel and the Jewish people are strong. Because they want to make deals with people who are strong, not who are weak. And it's difficult sometimes to get past the noise. Some of it is beyond divisive, it's hateful. But I think long range, I'm optimistic in terms of our people and Israel's role in, I hate to use the term, but in this case it's true, in Tikkun Olam for the rest of the world and being a center that it already is in so many ways. But right now we're in a crisis mode. And obviously we now talk about October 7th as a standalone, the way people speak about 9/11 or another date. The reckoning for the failures will have to wait, but it will come. And so probably the next time we talk, we'll have a different cast of characters running the show. In Israel, at least in some profound ways, but to see the igniting of achdut among unity among Jews almost instantaneously and instinctively. No one led the charge. No one said, Jews, the last time I saw that, I was 17, 18 years old, before the 6-Day War. The Soviet Jewry was a slower fuse, but eventually also, when we had the Achdut, we had great leaders, like then an unknown Natan Sharansky and others. Right. I've experienced and witnessed what Jews can do when they work together, and I've seen the bitter price we pay every time we forget those lessons and we end up fighting with each other. So because we deal with issues about the Shoah, about hatred, about digital terrorism and hate, and our outreach is, of course, to the Jewish world, but also beyond. I find that the greatest word to use when describing around the world, and I travel a lot, about Jews is not hatred, but curiosity. I want to know why would a Jew in Toronto care about a Jew in Tel Aviv? We don't understand it. And also, what's the special sauce that you guys have, and gal. And like there is something even when we forget it, you can be in Bangalore, India, and people saying, no, there's something special about you people. Not me personally, but about the Jews.
Sure.
And I also might want to share this one quick story because it has a great relevance today. I go to Japan very often because we're the closest international Jewish group to Tokyo, and I've been, tilting at windmills since 1985 in Japan. So I've been there almost 40 times. Things are much better now than they were. You can fly now from Tel Aviv to Tokyo. It's aruka derech l'cheirut. It was a long and winding road. So in the early years, especially, we go into the bookshops and you would find book covers in Japanese, which I don't read, but colorful covers showing a hook-nosed chassid with batches of U.S. cash in his hands in the Empire State Building, and the big bad Jews. They're a threat to Japan, and no matter where you look in the bookstore, religion, economics, it was Jew. With virtually it's the 80s and 90s.
Really?
Yeah, runaway bestsellers. It was the idea of the Jew that chose a nation, whatever. And we took down some of the most powerful companies who were republishing the Protocols of Zion. One time we took down the most powerful sort of New York Times type, Ted Turner type place, when they ran on the 50th anniversary of Auschwitz, that the final taboo had been broken, no one was gassed there. That magazine was closed 5 days later.
Wow.
So then we really became the big bad Zionists. But I remember one time with Nikkei, which is like the Wall Street Journal, and we caught them doing something, and they already knew, you don't want to mess with these guys. We don't understand them. They don't understand us. We'll apologize. Part of the apology was they had to have 75 of their top people listen for 2.5 hours to our people. And I was the last presentation. I brought about 8 different first day issue covers of the Protocols of Zion in 8 languages, and tried to explain to them that this is not really an insightful book about Jews. It's a book that's a warrant for genocide. So I've been told over the years, when you go to Japan especially, never say at the end of your presentation, are there any questions? Because people think collectively there, and if you do that, you throw them off. And, it's a different culture, but I'm a native of Brooklyn, New York. So, of course, at the end of every one of my presentations, I would always say, are there any questions? There were never questions. So you never knew if you did a good job or a bad job. This time, the executive director of Nikkei stands up and says, yes, Rabbi Cooper, we have a question. So thank you for explaining to us that Jews don't go to synagogue on your Sabbath to plot the economic downfall of Japan. That's a quote. And we now understand that you don't do this and that Jews don't do that. I said, well, thank you very much. In 90 seconds, you encapsulated my 45-minute presentation. But what's your question? Rabbi Cooper, what do Jews do in synagogue? And that moment changed my job. Because it suddenly dawned on me, Tipesh, you're just an idiot. You're all over the world, you're speaking to people, and you're gobbling up the Times, and we don't beat our wives, we don't do this, when really it's not so much, it's not hate, it's like, who are you? Please tell us what your core values are.
Right.
There's a profound curiosity. Curiosity doesn't mean you're an anti-Semite. It means you're curious. I've taken that message, and I dealt as a volunteer with a wonderful project called Connect Israel, run by Matuka Benjamin here out of LA, an amazing Jewish and Zionist leader for 50 years. But we basically bring together American Jewish business folks, younger bracket, and their opposite numbers in Israel. And then last year we took them up for a couple of days to the UAE. And when I spoke to the group, and I've never balanced my checkbook. I'm not an economist. And these are people, Baruch Hashem, doing brilliantly well. Why do they want me to come along? Because they want a kind of, I hate to use the term, sort of spiritual guidance. So I have basically one piece of Torah for Israeli business people in the Gulf. You can't talk about anywhere else. And I say, back already a year ago, there was somewhere between 500,000 and 700,000 Jews and Israelis have already been to the UAE. So why is that? Why? Because we heard there are normals in the Arab world. Let's go meet them. We have this amazing opportunity. We finally to meet where there's no war, there's no conflict. So you can say that Jews are curious about the UAE. Well, how about the folks in the UAE? You think they're a little bit curious about you? So I said, if you get an invitation from a potential business partner, and they want to have, let's get together for lunch for the first discussion, and they offer you on Saturday, don't take it. Say no. Why should you say no? I mean, I don't know how many of you here are keep Shabbat. It's not my business. Because by saying no, it gives you an opportunity to signal that person they can ask you about your values. Now, if you're not sure about your Jewish values, now would be a pretty good time to start thinking about it, because as an Israeli, maybe especially as an Israeli, when you go out, and I think a lot of people don't really internalize it because they just want to make a buck. But when you go out there, you are an ambassador. So if you haven't thought about what your values are, do it. You may not get the deal, but you're gonna find yourself in a operating on a different level. So that's the lens through which I look at all of these things. I have an amazing opportunity over the decades to be exposed to great people like Simon Wiesenthal and Rabbi Marvin Heyer and Natan Sharansky, and mostly to be with Jews back in 1971 in the Soviet Union, with people who didn't know the difference between an aleph and a bet, noted physicists, people who had it made in those systems, ready to give up everything to be reconnected to Klal Yisrael. Those heroes were, we were idiots. We thought we were going to help them, but we actually got an education and a reassurance from that kind of an experience of a month in 6 cities. That's Ach Yisrael La Yishaker. The Jewish people will continue to survive, and of course I'm of the belief that Jewish destiny will be focused where it needs to be, in the land of Israel. There will always be people in the diaspora. There's no need to rush to shut it down, although it seems some of our enemies are in a big rush. But basically, the Jewish destiny, despite all of our enemies, is heading in the right direction. The only time we hit the really bad speed bumps is when we forget to respect each other. Every single time. I'm not that smart, but I'm lived old enough to see that you can just see every time that, when I once was in the Parliament building in Budapest, beautiful historic building, and a couple of years ago, and by accident I was going through the number 2 anti-Semite in the country, and we both
bumped into each other
and went sprawling. So, Hungarians can be, I'm originally Polish-Russian, but Hungarians can be really solicitous. And I said, he's talking, and I'm talking, and I said, Excellency, first of all, I apologize, I'm so sorry, I'm glad that you're not hurt, etc.
Oh, you literally bumped into each other physically?
Physically bumped into each other and knocked each other. Right.
Okay.
So,
got that.
And I said, but, listening very carefully to what you're saying, and you suffer from a Jewish disease. He goes, what? I said, yes, I'm listening to you. You're a very clever person. You're articulate. What's wrong with that? I said, because you forgot that other people are also clever. That, sir, is a Jewish disease. That is, meaning that when it comes to our own, we are our biggest enemy. And when you see that piece fall away, and Chalila, it should never have happened, certainly never happened that way, and the price that we're paying every day for Kadosh, it is literally beyond words, really fail us. But we see since October 7th that profound resolve of the nation of Israel. I hope the politicians will be worthy of them. But this is one time where the nation of Israel forgot about, when a mayor wanted to get a few more votes, so he, made them rip down a minion that had been around in Tel Aviv for a lot of years, and other shtuyot and insensitive things done from people who dress as Haredim. We know how to hurt each other. I mean, we're one family, so who best to, when that falls away, I can report to you as someone who's literally traveled the world many, many, many times. There's no power out there that's stronger than Klal Yisrael when it's doing what it needs to do. And what the good Lord wants us to do is pretty clear. It's basic, but it's heavy lifting.
On that note, I'm also explaining to people what we're experiencing today is a spiritual battle, and the Jewish people coming together, and there's so many signs of it. But one of the suggestions for the official name of the war is Milchemet Mashiv Haruach, the war of returning our spirit, which very much is connected to what you're saying as well. And we'll see if that ends up being
I would just say that the biggest responsibility going forward lies with the people who have Torah. It's not for us to make demands of others who, for whatever reason, either a Tinok Shenishba, they never had the opportunity as kids, or this teacher did that, or whatever it might be. What we just experienced again is that for our enemies, they don't care.
They don't care, right, left, religious, secular.
Couldn't care.
We're all Jews.
These are the 21st century Nazis, although they're different in the following sense. Simon Wiesenthal was the great Nazi hunter. He brought 1,100 people to the bar of justice. He lost 89 members of his own family in the Shoah. He barely survived. But his job was made difficult because the world didn't care after World War II. And the Nazis worked very hard to cover their crimes. These guys broadcast them.
Right.
Live stream them.
Right.
So, we're dealing literally with an Amalek force, and we know that they're part of a bigger threat that eventually emanates from Tehran. But even there, because you're in Tehran right now, Tehran, this is the largest diaspora of all Iranians, Los Angeles.
Really?
It's a huge population here of Persian people and many, many Jews. When you ask the people in Iran, not the government,
right,
they love America and they respect Israel. And the great tragedy is sort of what we're seeing right now that's beginning to unfold in Lebanon, is that Khalila, if Hezbollah is unleashed, and they can do us a lot of damage, that'll be the end of Lebanon as we know it. And the Iranians don't care as long as they're not attacked. So, not that we want it, but to change the dynamics right now and to clear the way for the next level of Israel, Israel society, Israeli history. We don't need to worry about a corrupt United Nations giving us closer, or even a close ally of the United States. We know, how the military operates. And we know the price that Klal Yisrael has paid for living by a higher moral standard, and will continue to do so. But the most powerful weapon at Israel's, it's right there, is Achdut, is unity. We have it, we're going to win, guaranteed. If we don't, we're going to continue to struggle. We don't need that.
So one question I really wanted to hear your answer to for the benefit of everyone is, I think a lot of Jews, especially in America, but not necessarily, or especially out of Israel, but not necessarily, they were shocked October 9th, October 10th, right? After the tragedy happened, the news hit, there was an initial sense of sympathy for Israel and the Jewish people. And I guess many Jews assumed, well, that sympathy would continue. Not only did they realize the sympathy did not necessarily continue in the public sphere, but anti-Semitism grew, and there's an actual support for Hamas and growing support for publicly supporting genocide of Jews and what Hamas did and continually says it wants to do. And I think that has shocked many Americans, many Jews in the diaspora, more so than Israel, because we don't deal with it and we know the world isn't whatever, but has shocked them to the core. How would you explain that to people, of how something that should naturally bring about sympathy has led to something that's led to the growth of public anti-Semitism?
Right. Well, for one thing, since Israelis don't pay much attention, there's been an explosion of anti-Semitism targeting Jews in America for a number of years. Not even COVID slowed it down. And the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, confirmed that 63% of all the hate crimes target 2.3% of the U.S. population. I think the biggest game changer is social media on all issues, because you create your own reality. Telegram has thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of channels, Hamas-oriented, anti-Semitic, where's the best place to drive a knife into a person's body so they bleed out before help comes. Where to shoot civilians, and it's all there. Yeah, this is the brave new world, and you have TikTok, controlled by the Chinese communists until yesterday they were our greatest friends, and now they're on Hamas's side, and they manipulate the way, especially young people, what information they get, how they should look at it. It's a huge challenge. We're going to have to learn how to communicate to the TikTok world. But the worst purveyors of this really disease of hatred we have to look at the elite universities here in the United States. And there are many pieces to that, including that Qatar poured billions, not millions, but billions, into influencing long range the key universities. And unfortunately, you see that with the equity and the EMA movement, you see that it's equality for me, but not for thee. Jews, you either give up your Zionism, or you're on the outside looking in, and you become an enemy. And the Palestinians, Muslim Brotherhood, that's in it for the they're a long-term, long-range enemy, and they've invested 20, 30 years in embedding into the system here. Qataris invested massive amounts, but I think there's also one other piece, maybe nobody talks about it enough, and that is we have failed, collectively, generations have failed, American young people. Somewhere along the line, we forgot to tell them that there's good and evil in the world. Mm. And so if everything is relative, and everything is how you feel, then you just sprinkle in a little bit of intersectionality, and the stuff that you and I, if we ever deign to write that in an 11th grade term paper, we get an F, is now considered scholarship. So these are, fundamental changes and challenges. But again, it comes back to, if you really believe that there's good and evil, that there's sachar va'onesh, you can be rewarded, or some of the basics that have never, and then it's not a matter of theology here. It's really much more fundamental and more basic. I think we have failed in so many societies, sort of walk past that. And what Hamas just did is a brutal show to say, oh, no, we are evil, we're proud of it, and besides, if you're fighting a Nazi, what do you do to a Nazi? You kill him. So I think that the counterattack, if you will, cannot only involve Israelis or just Jews. It means people who carry themselves as faith leaders, they have a responsibility also. And I think it's just maybe one cautionary tale is that, there are, thankfully, many, many millions of Christians, which on the day after, on the 8th, which was still in Chutz La'aretz, was Simchat Torah. Do you know how many millions of Christians across the United States in their churches on Sunday prayed for Israel? I'm embarrassed to say, but in the millions. So let's also never fall into the trap of living our lives based on the phony, false, hateful narratives of groups like Hamas. We have to live our life one way or the other on our narrative. And our narrative, because of the Torah values we have, are big enough and broad enough to carry us, but also universal enough to impact other people who are just waiting to hear, why does a Jew in Toronto care about a Jew in Tel Aviv?
All right. And last question, how would you explain to, especially American college students, the growth of anti-Semitism in the name of pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine, anti-Israel? They're not necessarily Israeli. Maybe they visited Israel, maybe they didn't visit Israel, so they have nothing to do with Israeli politics. Why are they being attacked personally?
Let me answer it in a slightly different format. You've heard of BDS, right? Israel fights. We all fight.
Boycott, divestment, sanction.
Right. So take a look. Step number 1 in BDS was to say, oh, no, we're not anti-Israel. It's just it's over the green line, soda stream, got to move. Yeah, some Palestinians lose their jobs, but it's more important. This will set the stage for negotiations. Step number 2, Ben and Jerry's. All of Israel suddenly became treif. Okay. Step number 3,
all of Israel.
Right. Step number 3, attacking Jews in the diaspora who supported Israel. And step number 4, where we're at right now, is attacking all Jews. So this whole, facade that it's just about Zionism and it's just about this and it's about the border and it's about occupation. There are no occupied communities in southern Israel. That if there is one spot of Israel that's been internationally recognized, so you know what they do? They just say, yeah, but every place Israelis live is under occupation. So we're now beyond the facade. The ones who blew it up, Hamas, they blew it up for their own reasons. And so you could, if you were a Jewish person who was not emotionally involved, who never visited Israel, just say, what a pain, or worse. But now, when you take a look and see the raw face of hatred of Jews, the type that maybe your great-grandparents spoke about in Eastern Europe, or if you had a Holocaust survivor for a grandparent, it's suddenly in your face. And just one key thing is one thing that we learned from the beginning here, or even at the Wiesenthal Center, especially, you can't build your Jewish identity only on the negative, on hate, on genocide, on threats. That's why I say it's so important for young Jews especially to find their way, to learn more about what are the values that sustained Jews for 2,000 years while we were in Galut. I was just this past Shabbat, I spent in the Great Synagogue in Rome. They have a unique siddur. There are certain pieces that are changed or left out because they were in Rome, and they were even there before, before the destruction of the Second Temple. But nonetheless, you're sitting in Rome with strangers, but you're part of a community. Right. You're part of a family. If you don't know what that feels like, in the positive sense, you should take the opportunity to learn, because unfortunately, the negative stuff is going to continue to come at us. And our best first defense is the state of Israel, along with a strong Jewish identity.
100%. And just to let you know, just in June, my organization held a conference in Jerusalem at the Begin Center, where Elon Carr, a former U.S. envoy to combat anti-Semitism, was the keynote speaker, together with many other prominent Jewish people, where we titled the conference "Unmasking the Anti-Semitism Behind the Palestinian National Movement," which you touched upon in terms of the BDS. And we're looking forward to having another one this year. And,
I only go where I'm invited.
And part of the message is exactly that. On the one hand, calling out, exposing the anti-Semitic basis to this whole anti-Israel, anti-Zionist movement in the name of Palestine, while on the other side of the coin, instilling the positive values of Israel and the Jewish people. So people have both. So you definitely touched upon that.
Great.
Rabbi Cooper, thank you very, very much. Continue your very, very holy work.
And God bless. Continue yours.
Amen. Signing off for another episode of The Pulse of Israel, not in our eternal and ancestral homeland, but in Los Angeles with Rabbi Cooper in the Simon Wiesenthal Center. If you are not yet a subscriber to The Pulse of Israel, just go to pulseofisrael.com and sign up. And if you enjoy the videos we put out and the messages and believe that they are important, just click on the donate button every once in a while on pulseofisrael.com. Shalom, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.